Hi, this is Denise.
Hey, this is Maggie.
Welcome to our podcast, Candor and Courage at Work.
Denise and I have known each other for a long time, a couple of decades, HR pros, and we thought it might be helpful if we got together and shared some of the things that we've learned along the way.
That's right, Maggie. Many struggle with being candid and being courageous, and we just want to use what we've learned to help you use those traits in your daily work life.
Here's hoping that makes you more successful. And here we go.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey, Denise.
Hey, Maggie. So our topic this month is a continuation on last month's topic of passive-aggressive behavior.
I think we didn't plan that way, but because we got such great feedback and some good questions, and we're going to hit a couple of those today, from our listeners, that we realized we couldn't make that a one and done. You know, it was just too much content to not then have these conversations today around the questions that folks have asked, as well as then, of course, on reflection, realizing that it might behoove our listeners to hear some of the experiences that we've had.
Yeah, it feels like last month was more like 101, where we kind of delved into what is passive aggressive, you know, and all that. So if you missed that, please just go back to the prior episode and listen to, you know, the 101 session of it. But today it's 201, where we want to get into some application of how to deal with people that are being passive aggressive, and maybe some war stories, success stories.
Well, I don't know about success, but at least experiences for sure. Yeah. Well, one of the questions that we picked, and just so that I get this out early, you know, we have folks that utilize the link that's available at candorandcourageatwork.com to leave us a message. And so sometimes in some future episode, we've got a listener story to share, but it's also how we get questions.
Yes.
And so thank you for that. We really appreciate it. And so out of the gates, the question that really resonated with us to tackle today was from a manager who asked, you know, are there any steps that I can take as a manager to help prevent passive-aggressive behavior?
Yeah, I laughed when Maggie and I talked about this question. I'm like, wow, if we could prevent passive-aggressive behavior, we'd have, you know, just a winning business idea.
Agreed. But it comes down to the basics.
Yes.
And so, you know, really starting with understanding, why does passive-aggressive behavior show up? And then realizing all the aspects that the manager controls around that, you know, like making expectations clear, making sure that feedback is safe to give and receive, and that anything that comes up, I often, and I know you also use this same quote, we can't solve problems we don't know about.
Correct.
But when we do have problems land on our lap, we get to choose how we respond to them. And the manager has to make sure that those concerns are addressed.
Yes.
That's part of creating that environment that feels safe enough to genuinely engage and thus refrain from passive-aggressive behavior. And then, you know, in the world of continuous change, having things shift without explanation. And that goes back to, we're a broken record on Simon Sinek's, you know, starting with why. But that explanation of moving from this to that is critical. And then at the core, you know, leader's job is not only to remove obstacles to success, but also to grow and develop people. And when that investment is made, that's when people feel valued. So it's really not rocket science. It's good leadership in helping prevent passive-aggressive behavior. And so when we think about, as a manager, what are those things that we control? We pretty much control all those things.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I feel like for me, and again, here's the broken record. It goes back to in order to know why, you have to have spent some time with your people and getting to know them.
Yep.
And if you're a manager that's not what I call plugging in and learning what motivates your people, what, motivates them the wrong way, but you have to build those relationships. And, I feel like I should get that tattooed on me or something, because that's what's been the key to my success to this day is just sitting down and knowing people and letting them know me.
Yeah.
So part of letting them know me is to know that I have a hard time with passive aggressive folks. And so I'm more apt in my style to direct back and say, this tone or this language is not productive. And I feel like when people are testing you, especially new in a work relationship, when they learn that you're going to challenge them on it respectfully, that they may be less inclined to be passive aggressive with you because they know that it's not going to stand.
Right. They're for sure going to see, well, that doesn't work.
Correct.
And maybe, and in the story that came to mind when we were really talking about passive aggressive behavior for me, involved individuals that I know learned that behavior from their manager, who used that passive aggressive approach almost exclusively.
Yes.
In engaging with others within the organization. So they saw it be effective. And so to your point, when you put it out there, that's not going to work with me. That's not going to fly with me. And it's not about being accusatory or
labeling. We talked about that last episode. Don't passively aggressively say, wow, that was passive aggressive, But the whole behavior of, for things, the conversation to be fruitful, let's speak in problems and how I can help you solve them and, and how I can grow you. Back to your point of the second point of leadership to be, well, maybe it's the first. We'll duke it out on that on a later date. But, my primary role as the leader is to grow and develop other people.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, calling them on it just from the standpoint of picking your battles, obviously. And I know that's a big one for you, but essentially making it clear that that's behavior that's not going to work.
Right.
I like acknowledging that it's okay to disagree. Let's talk it through.
But
right?
Regardless if it's passive aggressive people or not, to set the tone of you and I are going to disagree, and that's okay. I'm ready to hear what your viewpoint is, so that I can maybe shift my way of thinking a little bit to open it up to a different possibility or thought line that I hadn't really considered before.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is the effectiveness of working together, is capitalizing on strengths and sharing those thoughts and so forth. So in that regard, we've talked about, really the factors that contribute to why passive aggressive behavior shows up and what the manager can do about it. Are there any specific, thoughts or recommendations for a manager to identify any early warning signs or engage in one-on-one with individuals that are demonstrating that?
It feels to me that, and again, my main experience with passive aggressiveness is the snarky side of things.
Gotcha.
Where it sounds sweet and nice, but it really is not.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think, again, being in the people business for as the years that I have, I've probably grown a good meter on when I'm being talked to in a snarky or passively aggressive way. I don't know beyond that. I know you shared last time the people that dismiss you with the yes, I agree with that, I'm going to get right on that, type of behavior. That one to me, again, maybe less subtle to me, But again, when you have spent enough time with your people, it becomes easier to read when you're getting a genuine response versus something less than genuine.
Agreed. Yes, you hit on my pet peeve. I mean, that is, people who will agree with you in a public setting and then work against it.
Right.
When the meeting breaks up and the work commences.
Yeah, there. Be quiet now, Maggie.
Right.
I'm placating you.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's really, to your point, that directness and clarity. That's all around being candid with folks, building the relationship so they feel valued. That's a big part of it. They feel like they can provide feedback, so they don't have to hide behind the shield of, being snarky or whatever.
Right. And know that if they do choose that behavior, that it's going to be pretty much dismissed.
Yeah.
Respectfully, again.
Sure.
But, we're just not going to allow you to keep going down that path.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, one of my favorite things to reinforce is just being consistent.
Yes. Definitely.
Which is critical because then people know what to expect. And as you have team members come into the group, everybody can be like, oh, well, I can imagine how that's going to go for them if they're trying something that's not going to fly.
Because the word has gotten around that you can try that with Denise or Maggie, but you're not going to be successful. So let's figure out the right way to interact and converse so that it can be successful.
Yeah. So you set the tone for the team norms.
Yeah, I mean, beyond passive aggressive behavior, consistency, I think, is just a key part of leadership.
Agreed.
that when people feel comfortable and safe for those people that are looking for workplace psychological safety, that I know what I'm going to get. She gives it consistently every time. And so I don't sit there and have to wonder if what I'm doing is acceptable or not.
Right. Well, very good. Any other thoughts on, how a manager might prevent passive aggressive behavior? I think we've pretty well.
I believe that's the end of that.
Okay.
Because if anybody has any other ideas, we would love to hear it.
Of course.
At the link. Because,
I mean, I have some probably not good options that come to mind, but we're not going to focus on those.
Yeah. Maybe if you're going to minimize it, you just minimize your time with the people that are passively aggressive.
Yeah. Yeah. That could end up being part of it if they're not in your direct reporting chain, which is, again, maybe it's time for me to just share that story. I keep making reference to it, but it's a pet peeve when you're working with individuals who will be in a meeting where you're initiating a change, and it doesn't matter what it is, a process change, a platform change, it doesn't matter what it is. And in the meeting, it's all smiles and head nodding and agreeing and, making some comments that can generally be perceived as supportive of that change. And then the meeting breaks up and everybody's got their marching orders. And with the individuals that I have in mind, I know the moment they walked out the door, that conversation amongst them was something along the lines of, when hell freezes over, will I support that? Or, I'm going to do everything I can to prevent that from happening. Or, nothing's broken. Why would we fix it? And then how that manifested itself was everything from active resistance to, the next check-in meeting and like, oh, no, I didn't get to that. Or I've never been trained on this. Or I didn't think that was something that I was responsible for. And it was just all those manifestations. And for me, it was easy to recognize that their manager, so these were not folks in my direct reporting line, but they had a huge impact on the change initiatives that were being undertaken. And I recognized that was learned behavior. And so both in endeavoring to address it, but, ingrained behavior that's been seen as an effective way to get what you want over a long period of time is very, very difficult to change. So try to change it, and ultimately ended up pretty much just having to work around it.
Yeah, when they don't report to you directly, that is so hard.
Yeah.
So hard. And for me, in a similar situation, not so much around change management, in my past, I've dealt with people that are just naturally passive aggressive and they don't report to me, and there's nothing I can do about it. This person provides a valuable role in the organization. So I'm sitting there, imagining what I would love to do, right? But knowing that I'm not going to go to jail or lose my job
There you
over
go, right?
this,
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, I think with that, you just go into it knowing you're going to get that resistance, and you just maybe can minimize their role or their impact in a change management change that you're trying to enact at your organization. For me, I went in knowing I was getting that resistance, again, rehearsing for what I would say and how I would react to the resistance, and just more or less killing them with kindness, because that was one we talked about last episode. You need to draw the line and say, do I confront this person with it? And if it will really have impact to improve the situation, I suggest you do. But in this case, it just never got better. So I just chose a different mindset. Again, to your point, we as the leader choose how we, address these things, because we can control our response.
That's right.
So I just went into it and said, okay, it's going to be a tough meeting. I'm going to have to put on my fake face and just deal with it and move on. When it's on my team, then I'm able to directly confront it if it really was somebody's not supporting one of my initiatives or something that's going to better the organization.
Yes. You
just don't have a choice.
Right.
You have to confront.
Yeah.
So.
Agreed.
And I think, going back to our lessons on candor and courage early on, our foundational episodes, we do that by calling out the specifics of what we observe. Okay. So, when you said that you were behind it, but yet I didn't see the results as it relates to, and I give examples of the results that are less than desirable, I need to understand why you're not working on this, or, just basically facts, observations. Don't make it personal, but just focus on this, and then set the expectation for what the result is that you expect to see in the ensuing time period. So in the next 30 days, because I'll be candid with you.
Yes.
I wouldn't wait 90 days. I would have a touch base in 30 days and say, this is what I need to see, because you don't want to lose any momentum from this conversation and have them say, well, she's going to wait 90 days, so it must not be that important.
Right.
So,
Agreed. And to keep the momentum, depending on the timeline of what your change initiative is, it may be even less than 30 days. It may be a week.
A week, yeah.
Or 2 weeks.
But setting that specific deliverable and the timeline, and making myself available to answer questions or be a support. Again, if this person is just not got your best interest in mind or the company's best interest in mind, then we're going to go back to the underperformer episode and suggest that, you make a change at some point.
Yep. Ultimately.
You can't have somebody on your team that doesn't share your vision. We don't have to be best buds.
No.
We don't have to see things exactly the same, and we shouldn't. We should always have those people that complement our skill set rather than mirror what we have.
Yes.
But if we're not rowing that boat in the same direction, then we have to, pick a new crew.
Yes, it just takes too much energy, and the progress doesn't happen. So I know when we talked about things that came to mind in delving into passive-aggressive behavior, you shared a little story of your own from way back when around a manager that used an approach.
Yes. And I will be candid with you all. That was my boss.
Yeah.
Again, not my current boss, a former boss. And he used passive aggressive humor to communicate in a very non-confrontational way how he really felt about things.
I'm just shaking my head.
So yeah. It's so funny how we've learned our skill set of candor and courage in spite of leaders that, weren't candid or courageous.
Yeah.
But no, I was walking the hall with him one day, and he came across an associate and said, "Hey, so and so, what are you up to?" "Oh, well, I'm glad to see you're working today and not doing personal things." Ha, ha, ha. And, this individual, as often is the case with some individuals, they thought it was a joke.
Yeah.
But I could tell.
That was no joke.
That was no joke. And the good news was he was being very truthful in his statement, but using humor to, camouflage a confrontational conversation, which is such a shame. Yeah. And of course, doing that in the hallway in front of me was not appropriate.
Sure.
But again, when it's disguised as humor, that was interesting how truthful it was. So you have some managers who don't share what they're thinking at all.
Right.
I'd almost rather have the humor side exposing exactly how he feels and thinks to give me better insight into my own supervisor. So
but just having to sort through that.
Yeah. It is. It was a little. Gosh, I hate to use the word bully, but it was aggressive,
Mm-hmm.
But again, disguised in that kind, funny, way, it was unsettling a little. Mm-hmm. But it taught me that, if he jokes with me about something, you need to absolutely listen. And so for our listeners, I would say to you, if you recognize it as passive aggressive joking, just take out the joke. It's really true.
Yeah.
So take that feedback and use it to your best advantage and learn from it. Don't do what he's joking about.
Right. Right. Yeah. You now have been put on notice.
Right.
Right. And because that's done publicly, which I'm, cringe about because it's praise in public and criticize in private. But because that was done publicly, you're also, as you were, going to be able to pick up on other areas that are demonstrative of unacceptable behavior in the eyes of that manager because of who they're joking with about what.
Yeah, and it's amazing to me how the folks that you choose that method of communicating with don't recognize that they're talking to you. And I would get it and internalize, was that memo about me? Did I do something? But these folks, they just always think it's somebody else.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's you, not me.
Right.
So.
Wow. Well, hopefully a couple of stories today have been helpful in enabling our listeners to understand more around how passive-aggressive behavior is manifested in the workplace and choices that you need to make in order to work with it, work through it, address it. And we really appreciate the questions. We embedded the answer to the other question today on preparing for and having those conversations when you encounter passive-aggressive behavior. And we certainly welcome more feedback and questions from our listeners.
Yeah, it really feels good to hear which episodes resonate with people, and it really energizes us to keep going with the topics. And if you have suggestions for other topics you'd like us to address, again, go to our website candorandcourageatwork.com and figure out from there how you communicate with us.
Super. Well, Denise, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today for Candor and Courage at Work.
We hope you found some inspiration and encouragement in today's episode.
For more information or to connect with us, visit our website, candorandcourageatwork.com, and be sure to download future episodes wherever you listen.